Hi, welcome to this part of my review featuring Unknown Armies, Book 1, Play. If you haven't seen the other parts of my review, featuring this role-playing game, where the player characters fight the status quo and achieve their objectives through occult means, please check out the playlist in the description below. This time we are going to talk about mental trauma. But first, I want to talk about this channel's sponsor, Heroes and Hardships. This is a universal RPG system, allowing you to play any sort of genre, campaign, scenario, story. You can create any sort of character imaginable. You have hundreds of tools to accomplish that. I'm going to put a few links in the description that will take you to the Kickstarter that should begin in about a month or so. You will also find links to the website, to the Discord, to the Tetsubo section of the website. Tetsubo is an upcoming setting for Heroes and Hardships, inspired by Japan's Sengoku era. You will also find links to my reviews of the Quickstart guide and the Wallace campaign setting, based on the life and exploits of William Wallace. Now let's continue. When it comes to mental trauma, having extremes on your shock gauge can indicate permanent, debilitating problems. There are two broad categories for people with problems concerning the perception of life and reality, and they both arise from undergoing too many stress checks. If you get 5 failed notches on any meter, you go crazy, choosing one of the maladaptive syndromes listed later on. If you have 25 hardened notches, you become burned out. Let's take a closer look at the immediate consequences of losing control. When you fail a stress check, you mark off a failed notch on the appropriate meter. You also freak out in one of 3 ways: panic, paralysis, or frenzy. If you panic, you run away at high speed. You can take no action except to run full out in the direction farthest from what made you panic. On the other hand, disturbing events often produce paralysis, indecision, terror, and a general deer in the headlights effect that persists until the stimulus ceases. Frenzy is what it sounds like. You attack the source of discomfort with any means at your disposal. You can't dodge or attempt any fancy moves, like multiple attacks on a single target. You act like this until the stress that triggered the behavior is gone, or at least until its immediate manifestation ceases. It's certainly possible to be challenged by circumstances that are too abstract to flee or destroy. If you fail a check from one of those stressors, you may just act out until the game master decides a reasonable amount of time has passed. Choose carefully. Once you make up your mind on how you're going to act, you must follow your choice. If you go berserk against someone who can beat the holy heck out of you, you are not able to run away. You fight until your opponent is dead, or until you're incapacitated. While you're in this state, you don't have to make any more stress checks. You're too screwed up to process any other stresses. Now, when it comes to ongoing madness, once you have 5 failed notches marked on a single meter, you don't have to make stress checks when confronted with that stress anymore. You just fight, flee, or freeze, as if you'd failed the roll. The only exception is when your hardened notches are enough to void the stress check anyway, in which case you suffer no effects at all. Otherwise, you have your short-term freakout, mark no notches, and life goes on. Of course, it's not really that simple. The first time you hit 5 failed notches on a single meter, you pick up some kind of mental aberration. It's important to note that an automatic failure on a meter you've maxed out on doesn't give you another aberration. 1 per stress is plenty. Let's talk about some permanent forms of madness. There is phobia. If something drove you mad, it's quite likely you develop a debilitating and irrational fear of it. There are also blackouts. You can slip into a semi-conscious state and simply wander away in an attempt to flee your past. There is also a booze and pills section. There are many reasons as to why your character could become addicted. You depend perhaps on nicotine, caffeine, which are categorized as uppers, perhaps on psychedelics such as LSD or Nexus. You also have downers such as sedatives. And of course, there is booze in the form of any alcoholic beverage. All of these substances inflict penalties on your actions, but perhaps you take them as the result of some sort of madness or insanity. And there are also details on getting callous. Cops, coroners, and caseworkers know all about getting callous. When you've seen enough horror, it loses its power to horrify you. The more hardened notches you have on a single meter, the more it takes for that kind of stress to rip up your head. Once you have 9 hardened notches on a meter, you are so jaded about it that only the most extreme incidents can endanger you. This is not a good thing. Mental stress makes us vulnerable, but it also makes us human. If you fill in too many hardened marks, you get cut off from a broad range of emotional experiences that everyone else shares. You are hardened, all right, hardened into an emotional fortress, completely isolated, unable to make a fundamental connection with other human beings. You might exhibit sociopathic behaviors or strong signs of depersonalization, depression, or dissociation. You are burned out. If you've descended into this state, you can no longer use your passions. You just can't relate to them anymore, and you don't get to flip-flop those passion-related roles. If you're an avatar who becomes burned out, you cannot use your avatar identity until you get treatment. You become burned out when your total sum of hardened notches is 25 or more. And this concludes this part of the review. In the next part, we are going to talk about abilities. I like how this system becomes quite detailed when it comes to these mental states or mental illnesses. They really go in depth. There are several listed here with all sorts of information, hard clinical details on how to roleplay them and how they will affect your character. I also think that it's quite balanced, that as you become more jaded, more callous, you are in danger of losing your humanity. You cannot rely on your passions anymore. When you actually get stressed out or suffer some sort of mental crisis, it hits even worse. So you get into progressively more dangerous situations, more stressful and nightmarish scenarios, and you are affected by this. I think it also makes perfect sense that different addictive substances are included, such as caffeine, nicotine, different drugs, alcoholic beverages. They become another tool for the game master to adequately represent the mental states the character goes through. During a bout of madness, perhaps you develop an addiction. Maybe you didn't drink or consume a certain substance, but after you are affected negatively, you start to rely on them. And of course, they all affect your character negatively. So it turns into a downward spiral sort of situation. Thank you for watching this part of the review, and thank you for your likes and your comments. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, you can send an Amazon gift card or a drive-thru RPG gift certificate. The information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.